Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of ValueCast. And it's the podcast where we talk about procurement and workforce-related topics, specifically things that we feel that need to bring more value to our business world, and even things that maybe aren't discussed enough. So before we go into that, I did want to introduce my guest today, and it's Ron. Ron, how are you doing today?
Yes, we're doing fine. Thank you for the invite.
No problem at all. No, thanks for coming on. So I've known Ron in and out of my career, to be honest with you, because when I used to be previously at Beeline, Ron was previously his old employer Randstad, and we sort of touched and talked through a few things. But I suppose I've had more connections with Ron in the last few years since I left Beeline and became ran my own company in consulting. But Ron, I won't introduce you. You introduce yourself and let people know who you are.
All right. Ron Bosma, but you already mentioned. We go, I think we're both veterans in the industry. Probably looking to my gray hair, I'm a little bit more veteran than you are.
As you mentioned, 15 years. It's not that bad, Ron. We're not that much.
No, that's true. And as you mentioned, I worked all my career within the Randstad Group. Out of this 30 years within the Randstad Group, I worked 7 years, the late 7 years on building up a company called Randstad Sourceright, a global leading company in MSP and RPO. And as of 2018, I started my own consultancy company with a few colleagues and are focusing on advising clients and relationships about global sourcing, but also contingent workforce management.
Yep.
And in that area, we come across more often than in the time of Beeline working together with Randstad.
Indeed. It's a really interesting area, and I absolutely love the industry that we work in. There's not one day that feels the same. Although we're technically tackling similar challenges, because companies deal with things so differently, it never really is the same, if that makes sense. It's
absolutely
one problem, but many ways of managing it. The reason why Ron and I are talking today, not just because we do enjoy talking, is that a few weeks back, Ron and his team put out an article which was focused on bridging cultural differences around international sourcing, and I found it really interesting as a topic. And when I read through it, I asked Ron if he'd kindly come and speak about it, because I think it's a topic that we overlook a lot within business, because we are very focused on maybe some other elements, which is, when we talk about global sourcing, it might be towards more skills or cost efficiency and certain things, but actually we do tend to forget about the sort of the cultural gaps that do appear when we look at how companies manage their global sourcing. So that's today's topic. I'm going to ask Ron to provide his knowledge a little bit about what he sees, sort of some of the common misconceptions or challenges. We'll talk through some lessons learned that he's experienced, and the reason why TalentIn as a business also focus on helping companies with this type of work, and then maybe some closing thoughts around how do we you're a business, how do you even approach this? How do you even approach some of these difficulties that might be there but you don't even know are there? So that's the premise of what we're going to run through today. But why this topic, Ron? Why do you feel it's important to help businesses through this type of area?
I think throughout my career and the experience working in a more international environment, that already triggered me. How do you make the connection with local teams? When I started Randstad, we were pretty local, and we moved to being #1 supplier in the world. So I made a lot of mistakes on, let's say, working together in global teams.
Yep.
So that on itself is already why this topic interests me on how to move on. And that's also how if we are in discussion with clients, it's always about, we want to do global sourcing, or we want to be a global organization, but that's always about systems, processes, and how the rules are working globally, and not about how do you connect to the people, and how do you build teams, and what do you take into account if you want to source even I'm born and raised in the Netherlands. I live in the Netherlands. But even if you want to recruit in Belgium, it's already, although we speak Flemish and Dutch, it's already different on a cultural level. So that's why it's throughout my career, it triggers me.
Yeah, I'm similar in a way because when I look at even I when I ran the operations and sales and things for Beeline, the the challenges, especially in a place like as London, right? You hire so many different nationalities and people work so differently in the way that they communicate that sometimes it's a massive challenge to even let's forget about process. How do you actually get them to work as a team together, right? And how do you get to bring them together? And it was always really interesting how some cultures that came into the British culture, as it was back in those days, more international culture now, that the Dutch were a big team of people who integrated really well. But yet some other people from different cultures, we really struggled. And, even today, I know that those sort of things continue on. Like, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions are when people look at this area of sort of integrating culture into their global sourcing?
I think it's global working or global team doesn't exist. It's always a merger of collaboration of local teams.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest misconception. A global team doesn't exist. Yes, you are globally structured, but taking into account the different where people live, where they work, with what are the cultural difference, what are the rulings, you have all kind of local teams that work together as a global structure.
Yeah.
And that's what we call global teams. But in my essence, it's a collaboration between individuals or local teams working together. And that's also the biggest challenge, because I remember in the early, I think it was 2010, when we started off working with software development in India.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with working global and having a development team in India.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge on itself, because we thought we the functional description, we put it on a high level, assuming that the teams over there could be self-exploring the details, but they just built what we put on paper, and they didn't thought about could it be this way or that way, or let's improve it. They just built what we said.
Yeah.
And having that cultural gap, because they are thinking, hey, this is our leading company, we have to build what they say, instead of we setting out the high level structure and wants everyone to contribute.
Yeah, I agree. I suppose that sort of weaves into some of the things that sort of I've looked at myself, but also you guys have written about, which is cultural training. So to your point there, you can have a single process to follow, but if people don't understand how people work in these different countries, whether it's as simple sometimes as just US to UK or US to Netherlands, right? It's even that level of culturally understanding how is someone interpreting that process and how to deliver that process is a huge challenge. So it's like, do you see it as a challenge that sometimes businesses step into going, well, let's get a development team in India, costs are great, we can get people in to do the work, and we know they're going to do the work because reputation's good, but forget about that training aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. It must, at the end, it's a more people-centric approach. I remember even between the Netherlands and UK, when I think it was 2008, my first experience with a group of colleagues in, I think it was in Manchester, when we had a reorganization, and then I came up with a proposal, and they said, "Oh, very interesting." And to be honest, I thought they were really interested, but sometimes in the UK they feel it's rubbish, or okay, it's okay, but just too polite to say no. And as a Dutch, we are pretty direct. We accept it's rubbish, it doesn't fit, so that's okay. So even on that small kind of cultural difference, how does it work related, or what people say, is important. If you're going, just as an example again, if you're going to Belgium and you're in a meeting and you make 10 decisions, I was really provoked or surprised that after that meeting, all that decision will be rediscussed during the weeks after. I thought we have that made that decision, but then it's in their cultural way. It's always to embed. It will be rediscussed and reinforced. So, and I think that's just a few examples that it's all about the people centricity that you have to put in your global approach, because the easiest part is making global processes or global systems or global rules. That's the easiest part, but really have an in-depth understanding how it works in a team. If you're setting up a shared service center in Eastern Europe or working across the ocean, I think that's, in my view, the key elements that drive success.
Yeah. It's interesting when when I'm listening to you, suddenly the examples flood back from my brain, right? From two aspects. Well, he wouldn't mind me talking about this, but my old boss, he's French, and it probably, we ended up having a fantastic relationship, but it took 3-4 years to really understand and nurture the culture, and also bring him into the culture of people that he's working into, but also get those people to understand how he operates. Right? We had the same goal. We had a budget and a target and a focus, but the amount of time, not just myself, but other people have spent in their careers actually working out those cultural differences to then finally understand what that goal means to everyone. That's like a huge sort of, I suppose, reflection for myself, that if only we'd spent more time back in day one understanding the cultures a bit more. And then the second example from my side was more, we had a big outsourced team in the Philippines, right? And the Philippines, absolutely outstanding, like work ethic, so targeted, but very similar to your example earlier. It's like there's a task, get it done. So they were seeing the goal slightly differently to how maybe we were seeing the goal. So I believe that businesses do sometimes forget about the human side and focus too much on, the compliance and the process. And it sounds like that's still a common thing that happens when you speak to clients.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's what I learned throughout my career with Randstad. But I think after the acquisition of Videor by Randstad, I think we really went global to 40 countries, and then we decided also to invest in, let's say, that's global understanding of the differences. So everyone that worked internationally went to a 3-day training in understanding, at least in theoretical, understand that difference. And there was also always a training with international people. So that's practice what you preach, is if you're having a training of 3 days with, let's say, people coming from across the world, talking about the differences, that is always, then that is real felt real, that the differences are there, and you can, but also can overbridge or overcome that differences. And that's also what I, during my career, I spent a lot of time if I had teams in Budapest, in Hungary, or in France, or in Greece, especially the first year of that relationship, I spent a lot of time being with that local teams to adapt what they feel important in the work relationship.
Yeah. So from your perspective, when you look at lessons learned and best practice, it really is sort of, let's not initially target and focus making sure everyone's working to the same process. Let's target and focus on making sure that everyone knows how to work together. Would you say that is reflection?
Absolutely, and how everyone understand their local view against what are the rules and what are the tasks and how are they perceived. So taking that cultural awareness as a key central. And then, of course, you have your rules, but also understanding sometimes there are local regulations that drives behavior behind persons. So understanding how it works from not only from a cultural, but also from a government situation, how they are controlled, what is the insecurity or the security that they have. Yeah. Because insecurity drives behavior within people.
Yeah, most definitely. Do you have an example of where you've seen that at a business? Obviously, I'm not expecting you to name businesses, but something where you've
No,
got.
I've seen, of course, situation where we feel in Western Europe we feel real secured about there's always work, and especially in this time. But that's
Yeah.
if you're going to countries even close by. If you go into the south of Spain, for example, having work is not as common because the unemployment rate where we have in Europe, just take for example a 5-6% unemployment. We in the Netherlands we are below 4. If you're going to south of Spain, they are at least with the young population, it's above 15. So that behavior, the feeling insecure about having your job, drives a different behavior in a working relationship, because that feeds the insecurity and not stepping up what we expect to do.
Yeah, most definitely. It's that real understanding of, well, what is, in that specific region or country. Because I suppose this comes up as a topic when you're speaking, because a business may come to you, or you've heard within the industry, we're looking to expand our services. We want to outsource our customer service center, let's just say, as an example. How would you approach that so when you're advising a client, like if they're saying, look, we don't know where to go, we're not quite sure what the best region area is to host this type of service, like is there like a best practice that you would take to advise a company on how to approach it?
Yeah, of course, it all starts with, let's say, doing a proper data analysis. What kind of skills do you need? Are they available in the market? How does the market legislation work? All that kind of, let's say, basic stuff. But at least then you have to choose which country, or what is the top 3 or 4 countries where you want to set up that business. And then I think putting a lot of effort on being there, feeling how it works, and put effort in the onboarding, especially on local management. If you got the trust of local management or the first 5 to 10 hires, that builds up, let's say, a more common relationship, instead of, all right, we need to have 600 people in Poland for shared services. And it's probably, it works well, but they're not part of that global approach or a global team with, let's say, the same attitude that you expect if you want to run global teams.
Yeah, it's a really really tricky area, isn't it, I suppose. And I don't want to say that all companies are like this, but where I've experienced it, a lot of it comes down to cost first, right? So it's really like how we're because the whole reason why this is being done, why it's why something is being outsourced or going into a shared service type approach, even internally, is because there needs to be a reduction in cost or a cost efficiency to ensure that they can continue to provide the value that they want to give to their customers, right?
No, and that changes over time. When you see labor scarcity, it's now often a time where are the skills available to do the work? Because just taking the Netherlands as example, we have 3-4% unemployment rate, and we already have, let's say, a lot of people working from outside the Netherlands into the Netherlands. So it's also, where are the labor skills available, or where can we train them to make it work? And of course, that's, if you want to look to the world, then of course cost is one of the elements that you're looking to. But also, I think when we first started all the IT outsourcing, everyone went to India.
Correct.
And nowadays you see it to Eastern Europe, and from offshoring also to nearshoring. So that's a changing environment continuously. And of course, cost is one of the elements that you're looking to. But I think it doesn't matter where you start. If you put enough effort in the cultural awareness and the onboarding of that kind of activities, and real understanding of what drives teams or what drives individuals being part of that common culture, as you would say. That's investment on putting effort over there, that will pay back
Yeah.
Gradually over the years.
Yeah. Well, it's like a lot of things in our life. It's about, it's not about pulling together a proposal document that looks really good, and it's the execution of it, right? And it's the leadership of how that is all pulled together, because I've been through bad experiences and good experiences of that, but where the leadership team isn't aligned, regardless of which region, where it is, then things tend to fall through. And if that leadership team aren't really communicating in the right way, then it doesn't matter where you're going, where you're sourcing, what you're doing. It tends to be one of the bigger challenges.
But nowadays, if you're coming to clients and say, "Hey, I want to have global sourcing," and that's to peel out what is global sourcing for you. How does that look like? And it's not just putting a requisition to the start of Africa or Asia Pacific. It's how do you want to treat those people as part of your global sourcing strategy, and how do you connect them? Because if you have someone that works isolated in Japan, it's probably less effective than if it's part of a team. Correct. So the team effort that makes 1-to-1-3 is probably the biggest challenge in the global environment, and must be the foundation under global sourcing.
Yeah, and I suppose I put paradigms to it as well, with the way a lot of our workforce, ways of engaging workforce shifts, in the fact that this global outsourcing is actually not a huge amount. You might disagree with me. It doesn't seem a huge amount different. That specific one example you gave about the person in Japan, about a business that likes to engage a lot of freelancers, or takes a slightly different approach to sort of a centralized function, where they might have a large number of freelancers coming in. Now, those freelancers might be predominantly from the UK or US or Netherlands, but actually, we all know that, each country has as many nationalities as the rest of the world,
absolutely.
right? So it's almost like, even if you're not global, you should have culture front of mind, right? Even if you are purely local, right, hosting a local office, that life is long gone. Even my goodness, even like 15 years ago, it's long gone. But it feels like some businesses still don't recognize that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's also, we are a shareholder also in a recruitment firm that recruits in South Africa and bring people back to the Netherlands, and that local onboarding helped them to feel at home, but also helping companies to adopt different cultures in their working environment, even if it's local. That's also one of the elements that is key for success. It's not easy. You see, if you're working at a company as Shell, or in the Netherlands, ASML, they have probably 140 nationalities working in one big office or one big factory, and how to manage all these kind of different cultures is already a challenge on itself.
Yeah. You're technically already hiring global, but from a local perspective. That's really interesting. You mentioned there about South Africa, because it is an area I've seen other businesses do more outsourcing. It sounds like what you're doing is a little bit different to that. You're actually helping people come over, versus sort of helping a business go, right, we've got a great team of people out in South Africa, but we can engage from there. You're actually saying, no, what we'll do is we'll help you relocate these people over to where you want them relocated, and actually integrate them within your business. Is that pretty much right?
Yeah, that's right. That company is focusing on, let's say, a specific group that really wants to leave South Africa on different reasons, and wants to migrate to another country, like we did as the Netherlands moving to Canada in the past. They really want to go. And then what we're trying to do is to find the right company for them that at least has the awareness of that they're bringing someone in from a different culture, and trying to support both ends. One is to help the candidate to adapt how it works in the Netherlands or in another country, and at the same time helps the company to adapt on foreign workers or colleagues. And this is more easy because South African is a little bit related to the Dutch language. I have done with let's say global automotive companies that really said we want to be global, but our instructions are in German or are in Swedish. Yeah, how do you want to be global? Because that's our for someone from outside, it's the most difficult language to learn. So why not going to a more international environment and start working in English?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I couldn't even think about learning a new language myself now. It'd be a bit of a challenge. But yeah, I suppose
you can practice on your Dutch then. That's okay.
Well, I've had many, within my teams that I've managed in the past, and I've got some of my closest friends are Dutch. They will still laugh at me trying to pronounce it. Look, my kids who are 8 and 11 always laugh at me how I pronounce French words. So I'm never going to get through that. But to go back to it, the proper preparation of candidates for their work environment, whether they are being managed remotely, as in working remotely, or you are bringing them in as you mentioned with this recruitment company, actually physically helping them start a new life in a new company, which by the way is outstanding. That must feel really good to be part of that journey. But that's the important part of it, right? It's just how are these people being integrated, and those simple steps that we mentioned earlier. So if we talk about so if you were going to speak to a company, and we'll get onto sort of closing remarks in a minute, but if you were to speak to a company and say, look, what were those three? I own a company. I say, Ron, what three things can you tell me that I should do correctly when I'm considering bringing in a different culture or a different team into my business? Like, what are the top three? Sorry, it's a bit of a waffle.
That's real taking interest in the cultural differences and the cultural awareness. One, make it an effective onboarding, so put effort in understanding, but also in the onboarding, and do, I think, often a proper check-in if these people are still feeling comfortable, and learn from them, because that's also they have a lot to bring. So the whole learning as perspective, that's also within in a diverse cultural environment. It's very it's challenging sometimes to get up, let's say, a learning cycle that everyone contributes. I think that's are the most important ones from my perspective.
Okay, no, that's super helpful. Yeah, I've done a lot of work in my life around leadership, but in the last few years, as you know, Ron, I sort of became a motivational coach as well, and took on that side of it. And actually, everyone has motivation, and actually these people who you're integrating into your business, actually, they might not just be motivated about doing their job. They might actually be motivated about getting to know the people they work with. So I think when you're doing these sort of things, you really need to understand culture and motivation. For me, are very two tight-knit things. If you don't understand the culture, you're never going to understand how they're motivated. Like, how are you even going to think about it? So for me, it's what motivates you, Ron? What keeps you going every day? Because you've been doing this. You've been in this industry a long time.
A long time, yeah. And still, I think, especially over the last 10 years, it's getting. We have a lot of challenges in the labor market, and that motivates me. That it's a continuously changing environment, and being part of that changing environment, learning new stuff. And you couldn't imagine before, even before Corona, we were used to, as a manager, working often on site if you're not working in an international environment, and now we are working through teams and working on a different way.
Mad, isn't it?
And I think adopting that new kind of way of working, but also the whole world of AI. Could you imagine that? That's 5 years ago. I'm not at the time that we only have mobile phones, and now we have everything. So that still motivates me to learn, and to adapt in my work and being part of that ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting that a lot of the people that I do speak to, you know, are very, very similar, that they have a passion. It doesn't actually matter what the subject is necessarily, but it's the adoption and the bringing in of new ways of working, or new cultures, for example, or just, you know, what impact can these things have on my job, but also, you know, being a fixer. It sounds like, you know, you want to fix things, you want to make things better,
Yeah.
which is great, right, from a personal front, but also from a business point of view. So yeah, you know,
And that's also my own learning experience. And also you must put a lot of effort in training your management team, help them how to adapt to, let's say, a global environment or a more cultural diverse environment. That's probably also one of the key elements for success, is help your management team to adapt, to learn, and to reinvent, let's say, the way of working continuously.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you came from you know, say the largest recruitment business in the Netherlands, and then subsequently globally, managing large teams, to then setting up your own business and then having to restart again and set your own management team up. So that alone was probably a big enough challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's okay.
Indeed. Well, thanks ever so much, Ron. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a couple of things today, but I think, you know, if I'm, you know, closing thoughts wise, I think we are basically saying, I think there's four key factors in my mind, which is cultural training, right? That's extremely important. We should, even if you're not expanding globally now, you should be doing that. That should be part of your infrastructure of how you develop your own team and your own business. And that's not just at a leadership level, but that's actually, at a more sort of granular management level that you need to do. I think, you know, clear communication is something that we picked up on. You know, working with local partners to make sure that, you know, it's very precise, and then, you know, proper preparation, you know, for candidates in their new work environment, whether remote or local. So I know, you know, that sort of summarizes a little bit also about what you said in your article. But was there anything else that you think, from a final thought perspective, that would be useful for people to hear?
No, although I think the focus is on, let's say, people-centric approach. I think still we have a lot to learn to adapt global technology. Adapt global technology. That's I'm still, if we enter in companies, then we see email environments local by local. We see a lot of local by local systems. So the easy pick up is to at least make that you have a global environment, and global could be cross country. That global isn't Asia Pacific with the US and Belgium. That could be France, Greece, and Spain. That's also global, and these differences are as much as, let's say, the difference between Belgium and China.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah,
also support the system with, let's say, the new technologies that enables working smooth together on a global way.
Yeah, the world of technology. Well, you know, I've been ingrained in the world of technology for many, many years, and, you know, even now, you know, with the paradigms and shifts that you see of what's being created, sometimes I feel like things be created too quickly, Ron. In all honesty, you know, if you look at the spider webs of how many AI models, whether they're just, you know, well, in the new agentic way, and even the newer models that are coming out, there's absolutely hundreds of them appearing. So it's sort of like, there's so many things arising that I think it's very easy for companies to take the wrong path if they're not smart and wise. You know, I hope people don't rush into technology too much, which could impact a lot of these cultural things, right? Because it can do.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you're doing experiments and try before you enter into, let's say, a global implementation. But if you don't try, you don't learn.
Yeah. Definitely. You can't be afraid of making mistakes. If we'd have done, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now if we're afraid of making mistakes. Probably the hardest lesson to teach one of my kids is that, you know, don't be afraid to mess up. And I think the other thing to teach our children is, when someone says global, they actually mean international. They don't really mean global; they mean international.
No, absolutely.
Well, Rob, thank you ever so much for this half hour. I've definitely found it very useful, and I hope those that have listened to it have done so too. And yeah, I wish you all the best with the businesses you're working with now, and you know, keep going, Ron. Everyone enjoys your content and enjoys what you do. So thanks again.
Thank you, Alex, and looking forward to catch up again.